So this video may ruffle some feathers. I don't care. I think that it needs to be discussed. And so Sonya Hassey was a black woman who was shot and killed in her home by police. She actually called the police herself because she thought that there was an intruder outside of her home. So there's body camera footage, at least from the one officer. One officer did not turn his body camera on until after. The one officer did have his body camera on the whole time. So yes, there are some issues with that, but that really doesn't have any bearing on how this played out. So she called them. They came, they searched, they couldn't find anybody or locate anybody, and they were actually getting ready to go when they saw a vehicle parked in her driveway. I'm not sure all of the details surrounding that. Ultimately, I know they began to ask her about it, and they actually entered her home at that point and asked her for some identification. Again, I don't really know all of the specifics behind that, but it was still a very light conversation. She was responding to them, talking to them. They were talking and having a normal conversation. There was no indication of what was about to unfold. So the body camera footage, I mean, it's not all direct. This is coming in bits and pieces, but eventually it gets to the point where you see her standing up and there's a pot of boiling water on her stove. So I'm sure you guys have seen the videos. I don't have a video to link into this right now. I may try to. But so the cop tells her to go shut the boiling water off because he doesn't want a fire to happen. To which she replies, okay. So she goes over there and she shuts the stove off. At this point, she picks up the pot of boiling water and she begins to walk with it towards the cops. And the cop asks her, what are you doing? Still in a lighthearted manner. And at this point, she's still walking in their direction. And you can see the cop on the body camera turn. He takes his front side away from her. And she's like, why are you turning? And he's like, because I don't want hot water to the face. And at that point, she says, I rebuke you. You can't really hear it too well, but that's what the transcripts say in news articles. And so he's like, huh? And at that point, she says, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. He said, you better fucking not. And at that point, they draw their guns. At that point, she puts her hand up. So there's a counter, an island in between her and the cops. At this point, the pot is back on the counter. She puts her hands up, and the cops have their weapon saying, I will shoot you in your face, because she just had the pot of water rebuking them, which can all be considered acts of aggression, and that pot of boiling water can be considered a weapon. So a pot of water, boiling hot water, can be considered a weapon that can cause very serious and permanent damage to somebody and could potentially result in death if they get second or third degree burns and those turn septic and cause an infection. So first, that is the first weapon that she had in her hands. Like I said, she was walking towards the cops. There was absolutely no reason that she needed to take this pot of boiling water and walk with it off the stove. She could have just pushed it onto a different burner. She could have just set it on the counter and left it there, set it in the sink. She did not need to walk in the direction of the cops. So that is considered the weapon. She told them, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, while coming with them with this boiling hot pot of water. Okay, that could be considered an act of aggression, which is why the cops drew their weapons. At this point, no shots have been fired. So she then has a weapon drawn and he says, I will shoot you in your fucking face. Okay, so at this point, she is visibly scared. She sets down the pot of water and she puts her hands up. She still has oven mitts on. At this point, and this is the key crucial point, you guys, she then ducks. She ducks down below the counter to where you can no longer see her. On the body camera, you can no longer see her or her hands, okay? That is a huge no-no with the cops, especially when they have their guns drawn. You do not take your hands out of sight. They need to make sure that you do not have a weapon in your hands. So right there, when she ducked down and they could no longer see her hands and no longer determine that she was not a threat and did not have a weapon, they had every right to exercise deadly force how they did. If she would have just froze and she would have just stayed still, she probably would be alive today. And if she wasn't, then that is when cold-blooded murder occurs. But right now, the facts of the case are still coming in, and this is going to go to trial. But people are so quick to get their emotions in this type of case, and I get it. I get it. It's an unfortunate event that really did not need to happen. There were errors on both sides. The cops never should have had her go shut the stove off. They could have just done that themselves. There was 2 of them. Yes. But that's not what happened. They were just unable to tell if she was actually a threat to them or not. And unfortunately, she lost her life in the process. They immediately called for aid. They immediately said that shots were fired. Yes, he told them not to perform life-saving measures. Her face was kind of missing at that point. So I don't know all of the details surrounding that, but the moments leading up to the shooting and the actual shooting may actually be considered justified. So they are going to go to court over this. They are going to be heard by a jury of their peers, and people will decide. I would like to maybe compare this slightly towards the Breonna Taylor situation. People were definitely outraged by that. The people were calling those cops killers, murderers, this, that, and the other. They all got acquitted because they were shooting in self-defense. And that's one thing that people have to realize, is these cops were acting in self-defense. They had no way of knowing if she had a weapon at her hands below that counter. This all happened within a matter of seconds, literally seconds. So they had to decide instantly. And unfortunately, they made a deadly decision. But I don't know if it was an unjust, deadly decision. So with that being said, this is how a lawyer is going to argue it. I'm actually in school studying law, and I would like to become a criminal defense attorney. So if I was this person's lawyer, this is exactly how I would argue this case. So I'm not trying to make waves, but I want people to understand that you guys really should take the emotion out of the situation and stop viewing it as a black on white police brutality when it was a life or death situation potentially, and these cops did not know and they just had to react.